This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Okay, we are back, and we're not back. This is another episode. It's totally fine. I've only had a few beers. Okay, literary briefs. Woo! Okay, our guest, before I talk about what I'm drinking again, preemptively, I'm my co-host today. I'm Erica Lance. Wow, I'm totally out of it. Erica Lance, my co-host today is
J.M. Piquet.
And our guest today is Roger Grimes. Computer nerds everywhere right now are losing their shit. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. I'm drinking Blue Moon iced coffee, blonde. It's actually it's a really good drink. Okay, Jen, what are you drinking that's lame?
I have bubbly, lime bubbly, because I don't drink.
And then Roger, who's made a New Year's resolution to not become like me, is drinking.
Yeah, I find it better to be slightly sober doing these sort of things so you don't say anything embarrassing. But yeah, so this is pure God's gift water.
Yeah, I gave that up a really long time ago. Over a year ago now, actually. What are you looking around for, Jen? If you watch the YouTube, you can watch Jen looking around like a crazy person.
I thought I had a bottle of water, but I don't.
But I love beer. I got to tell you, I love beer. And I love beer the way wine people like wine, trying all the wines. I love beer, and I love trying all kinds of beers, and I love the flavors, but I'm over IPAs. Yeah,
I'm not a huge IPA person necessarily. I actually love going to breweries and trying the different beers they create. You know, I found one of the best chocolate stouts I've ever had in my life at it's either Broken Lizard or Dead Lizard, and it's a little brewery in Orlando. Not doing it any justice, not remembering the name right now, but I would say I'd put it in the notes, but we all know that's not going to happen. So, okay, rapid fire questions. That's what Literary Briefs is. Rapid fire questions. What is your favorite book of all time?
Oh, wow. It's a short story by Flannery O'Connor. You know, Good Man is Hard to Find. That's it. That's the pinnacle. Best book. Gosh, you know, I'm going to look at my bookshelf right here. I read a lot of nonfiction and stuff like that. I mean, one that kind of changed my life, my new favorite for the last couple of years. It's a bizarre one, but it's called Beyond Weird with Philip Ball. So it's about quantum physics, but he's not a quantum PhD physicist in the traditional sense. He actually wrote for Science or Nature magazine for a whole bunch of topics, including quantum physics. He explained quantum physics in an alternative way that literally blew my mind. And it's called Beyond Weird by Philip Ball. He explained it so differently and so weirdly that everybody I know that's ever read it feels the way I do. And it made quantum physics make sense. I would say that you have to understand quantum physics a little bit before you read his, so go read some basic thing. And if you really care about how does quantum mechanics and quantum physics, what's it mean? How does it work in this world? It's his thing. So I love books that are going to change my life. That book changed my life.
I like that you said you have to understand quantum physics a little bit to understand that book. I think that's hysterical. Also, by the way, if anybody hears any noise, my boyfriend's installing rear speakers in the living room and has apparently picked fucking now to do it. So whatever, it's fine. Podcast.
We can't hear it.
Okay, that's good. Good, because I'm like, what are we doing? Rock band in the living room? What's happening? So my next follow-up question is, what is your favorite? And I'm changing it up a bit, Jen. Watch this. Woo, changing up a bit. What is your favorite book to reread?
I don't know. I'm going to be kind of boring here, but I read a lot of biographies. And so, and it changes. I don't know if I really have a true long-term favorite, and it's not going to be fit because remember, I'm a nonfiction guy. So, I mean, it's like the biographies of Truman and Edison and Thomas Jefferson and like John Meacham.
You know, it's interesting you say that. So I'm going to give you another little nugget of advice, another little Erica nugget of advice. We talked about this on the previous podcast a little bit. Read in your genre. Make a point to read in your genre. I don't care if you want to do something different, do it differently. Totally okay in the world to do that. But read in your genre. It actually makes you a better writer to read in your genre.
Well, I do. That's the problem, is I wrote 12 books on computer security.
No,
so-
I'm talking about the genre you're going to be writing. Sassy pants. I want you to read in your genre that you're going to be writing, because you're going to be writing very much a science fiction, in a way, story. So
Okay, actually, I've got two or three more books really quick I just thought of that I love. And one is a fiction book. Two of them, so Man's Search of Meaning, Viktor Frankl. That's just a book about why are we alive? You know, what is our meaning? And then my favorite, so that's my favorite book to read, just again, why are we here? And I can tell you in one sentence out of the book, but I'll let people read the book. It's a short book. But my favorite fiction book that I've read probably, and this is a crazy one, but kind of fits into my biography thing, is Mila 18, which is a fiction book. Can't even remember who wrote it, but it's about Poland and Nazi Germany and the occupation of Poland and Nazi war Germany and that sort of stuff. And what I loved about it was that it was a fiction book that was fairly historically true, and taught me, I love any fiction book that is based around true events that teaches me more about the true event.
It's Leon Uris. I just had to check to make sure because I remembered the cover, but it is Leon Uris who wrote it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So it's terrible that I say, what are my favorite books? But I read a whole lot of biographies, histories, just.
I read a ton of biographies too, but I can tell you, like, if somebody asks me what is my favorite book of all time, Ender's Game. Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card is my favorite book of all time. That, and there's Pierce Anthony's other books that follow up, but Ender's Game I can reread over and over again. Jen, I know you have to read Lord of the Rings for your thing, but isn't one of Stephen King's books your favorite book to read?
Well, The Talisman with Stephen King and Peter Straub, where they partnered up. The Talisman is my favorite book that I can reread. I read Lord of the Rings twice a year because I teach a class on it, and I read it with my students so that I'm like, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. What did we read for today? Yeah, that part.
So, but I think anyway, okay. So what is your, I'm getting so sidetracked. Am I, what?
Contact. That's one, the movie Contact is something I like because it's got a bunch of different levels. And when you look at it at the end, you realize it was saying something different. That's based upon Carl Sagan's Cosmos, but that's which is a great book as well. Okay, I'm through with them.
Okay, so we're going to talk about your least favorite book now of all time.
Oh gosh.
What's funny is I've asked you these questions already because we did this and lost the tapes, and I like that you just.
It's brand new. So how about Ernest Hemingway? Because I don't like his writing style. It's too choppy.
No, I understand. I say quite a bit that I don't like. What the hell is her name? Jane Austen. I know I'm going to piss people off that listen to this, and you can totally be a Jane Austen fan. You're allowed to like anything. You don't have to like what I like, and I don't have to like what you like. I can't stand it. It is so slow moving. It drives me completely crazy. I managed to get through Pride, Prejudice when I read Pride, Prejudice, and Zombies. I got through Pride and Prejudice because I was like, I can't do this. It's so terrible.
I know. I'm one of those people that feel like when I start a book, no matter how bad it is, I have to finish it because I'm going to get something out of it. But I recently started a book that I could not finish called Dark Money by Jane Mayer. And so it's about dark money and politics and the Koch brothers and all this stuff. And it just so bored me. And I felt like there's going to be an entire book about this because she explained what she needed to explain in 2 pages. And then the next 18 pages were just the same thing. And I kept reading and reading. It was the exact same arguments. And I was like, maybe one of a handful of books I've had to put down because I just couldn't finish it. So
it's interesting you say that. So Jen used to be I will chuck that book across the room or delete it from Kindle. I stopped throwing my Kindles because apparently that's bad for them, whatever. But Jen used to be I'm gonna finish this book. And she has recently adapted to the I'm not gonna fucking waste my time mentality. Because if it doesn't grab you and you're not like, why give away your time?
Kindle changed that for me. I have Kindle Unlimited now. So if I like had a library book, I was committed, right? I'm not going back to the library for a couple of days. I might as well read it. I have it in my hand. But Kindle Unlimited, I'm like, no, next, let me give me another one. So my reading definitely has changed because I would always finish book. But I'm also an awful reader because I read the end of the book first to make sure that characters are still alive. Because if you kill a cat, like your book, I would read the ending first, especially now because I know I wanna ruin endings.
And
Yeah.
but this is because she's kind of scarred by R.A. Salvatore, scarred her in a series of books. And so now she can't help herself but do that.
I need
I
a
don't do
happy
that.
ending. This is part of my I have a PhD in English. I read enough depressing, tragic stories in my life. When I read now, I want happy endings, and I specifically look for that. And I read R. Salvatore, and he killed O'Brien by pushing him off a roof in the most ridiculous way possible, and then had the bad guy come up and stab him. And I was so angry. I was like, done. No, not. And I love R.A. Salvatore, and now I'll occasionally read his books. And I actually met him, but I didn't tell him that he scarred me for life because I'm not Erica.
Yeah, no, I'll tell an author if they fucking piss me
No.
off. The only time, well, I take that back. I didn't tell the one author that really annoyed the shit out of me, only because people I with were begged me not to get us thrown out of convention. Otherwise, I would have said it. What is your so obviously you do research for your books. I mean, thus far. But I'm gonna pull you into the fiction realm. So you're just barely into the fiction realm, but I wanna pull you there and seat you there for a moment. You joined groups so that you could write this book that you're writing. I feel like you seem to be a researcher. Not all authors are researchers. Kind of what you said on the biography you were talking about earlier was that it talked about real stuff. And I think research is very important in books, and it doesn't have to be in all books, but research is very important if you're going to talk about a topic that actually exists in the world. If you're going to talk about a location that exists in the world, all that, unless you're intentionally changing it to morph it into something else, you need to know what the fuck you're talking about. So, how much you said you've been working on this for 10 years?
Yeah, and let me say, but I research everything that I get into. I get into a lot of hobbies. My brother calls me the great pretender. And he meant that. I think there was a show that was on TV where this guy would pretend to be different people. But I will, suppose I decided that I want to get into boating. I want to be a boater. I will buy 10 books from Amazon, 16 books. Oh, I got into fish tanks for 10 years. I bought 16 books on fish tanks. But so at the very least, I'm going to buy 10 to 20 books, read them all in a row. I'm in a new hobby right now, and I am reading every book on it. Like,
What is your new hobby, Roger?
uh, sniper rifle shooting, long range target shooting.
Okay, we're not going to talk about that. This could come up later as evidence. Okay, moving on. So you read 10 to 20 books.
Yeah. Yeah, and I buy all the equipment and I hang up in all the forums. But I really do believe that if you're trying to write about a subculture, that you have to get the vernacular and the language correct. And if you don't talk about it in a way that they talk about it, they will know that you're a fraud. And so I wanted in my writing to make sure that I didn't get called out for being inaccurate. And let me say, being part of it now for 10 years, I really understand the subculture really, really well, can talk in the subculture. And every subculture has its acronyms. That's a kind of a funny part of it. When you go in there and you're lurking and you're learning, there's these 50 acronyms that everybody's like, oh, the ACL, the GDP, the DR5, you've got to spend time learning what that is. There's always been a ton of controversy around a bunch of topics. You got to find the hot buttons. You got to find out what are the arguments and the arguments back till it's ad nauseum, where you're not even having to think about it. And then what I hope to do in the stories is drop a few things along the way where the reader of this subculture goes, he's one of us. Because I'm just going to say it in a way that seems very natural, but they know that this is an offsetting part that breaks them away from a person that doesn't have that mindset. And I'm going to try to say it as naturally and as casually, so this person goes, he's one of us.
And I'm going to just do the disclaimer again now. I don't know why the drunk person is doing the disclaimer on these shows, but we are not talking about anything having to do with information or cybersecurity or anything related to Roger Guime's present position in life. This is a completely different culture that he has not touched as of yet, and therefore do not hold him accountable for what he's about to write.
I will do nothing but piss off that subculture, but it should not impact me. Yeah, certainly not going to impact me at work.
No, not at all. I'm just disclaiming again. Okay, so let's talk about your writing style, because regardless of what kind of writer you are and what we're talking about, so you do a lot of research. Do you literally write your chapters out? Do you what we call plot your chapters and what you're going to do? Are you a pantser? Do you just sit down and write? Do you outline? What kind of writer are you?
So yeah, I would say that, and let me say that was one of the biggest lessons learned is I had to think, I had to stop and slow down, not only about the table of contents in the chapter, but just the chapter itself. You know, initially, I think when you're a new writer, you just go, I got all these good ideas, and you're writing and you don't have structure. And I certainly found that slowing down and thinking about a beginning, a middle, and an end for every chapter and the book made it writing so much easier. And certainly I do that. Even I write 2 articles a week of 1,000 to 5,000 words every single week, week after week. And I find that if I put my bullet points along, you know, I go, okay, this I'm going to start at this, I'm going to end it. And here's the bullet points just to remind me along my pathway that it helps me. So yeah, as I've matured, structure saves time.
Okay, so what you just described was plantsing. So let's talk about your fiction work for a moment, because plantsing is between a plotter and a pantser. So a pantser is like me, who will just sit down and fucking write shit. I just do that. I don't do this whole like, let me do an outline and nobody's interested.
But you tell other people to do outlines and it helps.
I do, because trust me, I am a very good example of a bad example. Like, if you are like me and can sit down and just write and do that, George R.R. Martin's like me, I think it's great, but not everybody has that ability, and it's not a bad thing because we're all different. But when you're writing your fiction, have you outlined what you want to do in each of these books?
Well, and yeah, and let me say that one was a lot more difficult because I want to share this. I want to share the societal change. So I had this end goal of what I was trying to accomplish. I needed to write a story that seemed natural and plausible. I want to say that the front story is going to seem very enjoyable and entertaining. And then I had to have a second story that completely shows that the first story was completely misunderstood. Like, just holy freak. And so that actually took a lot of, when I said I've been working on this for 10 years, I had to think about, okay, this is what I want the outcome to be. This is what I want the shocking point to be. How can I make it seem natural here so I can then reverse it here? And so it actually is taking far more planning. And then sometimes, let me say how excited, I would be in a gym on a treadmill and oh my God, that fits. And all of a sudden, 3 or 4 pieces I was looking for, I could think of a plot piece that, oh my God, that naturally makes those 3 things fall together. And I would be so excited. I couldn't wait till I got home. And now I learned, you know, I actually have on my cell phone this button that says, just send this email to me. So it's one button, so it's like a memo button, but it's so quick. I hit the button, type in the thought, hit send. And that makes sure that I don't lose it. And that was the best $7 I ever spent for an app in my life.
And what is this brilliant app?
It's called this, I think it's called Send to Myself, or let me see, it's been so long, or One Click. It's called One Click.
I'm just saying, because we have a lot of authors that listen are going to be like, that is a brilliant idea. I have voice memos. I talk to myself in my phone. If anybody ever got a hold of my phone, I'd be arrested. I've told Jen many, many times to make sure she shows up at the police station. My friends, I'm like, they know to show up and go, listen, I know she appears to be a serial killer, but I promise you.
Yeah, I used to do the
Writer.
voice memos. Yeah, voice memos on, yeah, I actually used to carry the little recorder around, before the days of cell phones, and then cell phones, I did voice recording, and now I love the one click because I can very quick. The only bad thing about one click versus voice memo is when you're driving.
Yes, well, you shouldn't use that when you're driving. I don't know why I keep having to do disclaimers for you, Roger, throughout this podcast.
I've only had one accident that was my fault in my 30 years, but from
It
all
doesn't
the
matter. You'll be held accountable. Don't
all the
text and
reading
drive.
of books and typing in emails while I'm driving, you think I would have more?
Do not say that
Knock
you
on
do that.
wood.
Okay,
So are
So-
you
go ahead.
Are-
You asked, Jen. Go for it.
are you a morning writer, afternoon? What's your best time?
I have to write. My best writing is before 12. It certainly is in the morning after I work out. I always think and write better when I've worked out, have the juices flowing. By the time 3 o'clock hits, something happens, and I've just learned through the years, I stop writing. I just don't do my best work, and it has become so natural that even if I have a deadline or something, I'm like, it's past 3, and I don't write.
That's so funny because Jen is an all-night writer.
I do my best. If I start at like 9, 10 o'clock, and then I write until 1 or 2. That's peak performance.
That's the way to go. Yeah, I literally feel like I get brain dead or tired. Maybe it's because I wake up at 4 or 5 a.m.
I'm
And-
going to bed.
Who the hell wakes up at 4 or 5? I'm not even going to get started on that. Okay, so what do you think, Roger? You keep, I think, lessening your actual stature in the writing world. What do you think your biggest writing pet peeve is? Like, what do you think, not pet peeve, writing, what am I looking for, Jen? I'm not saying these words correctly.
What, like the thing that he does that he needs to, yeah. Okay, so what's the thing that you do in your writing that you don't realize that other people are like, you probably should work on this? My characters nod and shrug all the time, and I don't notice it, and then I get it back from an editor, and it's all yellow, and it's every time I use the word nod, and I was like,
27
"Ooh."
times in one chapter.
Yeah, I certainly have a lot of repetitive words. I think if I was the Unabomber and the government wanted to find me and they did one of those writing analysis programs, they'd go, yep, this is Roger Grimes, right? Because I do have a particular style. But what I work at the most, and maybe this is everybody, I'm sure it is how to say something more naturally and even shorter. Like the best sentences are not something you're struggling with and go on and on and on, but something that is more natural. So I hate 98% of my writing. Out of if I did 52 stories a year, if I have 1 or 2 that I truly like where I'm like, I'm proud of that. And I'll tell my wife, I just wrote something and I'm proud of it. I literally tell her, the epiphany, God was writing through me as a vessel. If I have 2 a year, I feel good.
You're a very interesting writer. I'm just going to say that. You're probably one of the most humble writers we've ever talked to on the podcast.
Oh.
With your view for your extensive writing and success that you've done. Because the fact is you've 12 books or 14 books? 12 books.
Well,
12. That's fucking phenomenal. That's phenomenal. And I realize some of them have been retired. That's the word I'm going to use, just due to the fact that they're not applicable anymore because you're talking about Windows 95 or whatever, and nobody uses it. Although, I don't know if you saw Cobra Kai, he boots up his system and it's got Windows XP. And I was watching that the other day and I just started fucking laughing. And my boyfriend looked at me like I was weird. And I was like, that's funny to me because nobody liked Windows XP. Anyway, so Jen, do you want to do a final question?
I had one and now it's got, do you listen to music when you write?
No, that would be too distracting. And my wife loves music, plays it nonstop, loudly. And I don't mind hearing it in the background, but I could not do it if it was in the room. I would close the doors. I'm struggling to write and not be an idiot. Any distraction would just crush what little ability I have. Listen, and when you say I'm humble, you don't get a lot of emails from me, but if I was to send you an email, not only would the email have a typo, it would be hard for the sentence, every sentence of the email not to have a typo. I truly am one of the most unnatural, ungifted writers you've ever met.
Roger, it is so, you can't sit and say, it's kind of like, hi, I've produced 12 movies, but I'm not a good actor. Like, this is my next struggle to work with you on, is the fact that you have to step back and look at the accomplishments of what you've done. It doesn't mean you're great. Like, I don't think I'm the greatest writer in the world. I don't believe that. I know I'm a good writer and I know people love my story. I also know that it has to go to an editor every fucking time because I am not good enough to just send it out. I would never do that in a million years. You have accomplished so much with your writing. You cannot be a terrible or mediocre writer because you wouldn't have accomplished as much as you have.
I'm going to send you my sample chapter, and I may change your mind.
You know what? Send me your sample chapter, and then when you publish your book, you're coming back on the podcast, and we are going to have a fucking Jello cage match.
Like,
we're going to go over this point.
Humble. Turns out he was spot on.
Yeah, you know what?
But
I promise the listening / viewing audience that you send me your sample chapter tonight. You send me your sample chapter because I'm going to go through, and I promise that if I'm like, oh no, he was fucking right, he's terrible, that I will go and I will absolutely share that with the world. I am not good with follow-up. Our producer does all the follow-up with listing everything on the thing. If I'm wrong, I will own it up and I will do the follow-up.
But I am speaking for all the writers that are not natural, that through hard work persevere.
That's what's really awesome about it, because you can say like, yeah, I send emails and they're a wreck, but with your writing you just keep working at it. It's like the first time you draw something, it's a stick figure, and then you go back and you retrace it, you color it in, you erase it, and you do it again. And like, that's what writing is. It's not about just like perfect masterpiece. You have to you have an idea, and then you sketch it out, and then you rough it in, and then it just gets better and better the more you pick at it. And doing that is like, I have so many people just that I've met in life and students, and they're like, I have this great, like the people that come to you, those 97 people who are like, I'm going to write a book, and then they never do. It's about the follow through. So the fact that you're like, no, it's really not good, but I'm going to make it good. That's what makes you successful. That's what's awesome. That's inspiring.
It is inspiring. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of writers, I think, forget that they're playing a story in their head. And to put the story onto a piece of paper is a very different activity than playing a story in your head, whatever movie, epilogue, whatever you want to call it, that's there. And you have managed to do that on many, many topics that are great. So I can't believe I'm having an argument with you to boost your awesomeness.
That's exactly the haunting part that haunts me, is that I know I have this terrific story. It truly is better than most things I'm reading. And I'm not sure if I'm capable of writing it in the way that it needs to be written about, because it's a good story. And I feel like if I don't write it well, I will have diminished this terrific story. So I'm trying.
Then you just find a story editor that helps you pull it out of your brain and put it on a piece of paper. That's what story editors are for, not line editors that fix that you don't put enough fucking commas in your story. It's too many.
It's not all about commas. They're not the biggest deal.
Shut up, Oxford comma girl.
They're important, but they're not the whole deal. Like, to have a teacher who takes 5 points off for every single comma, like you're not helping anybody except learn math.
There's passive voice. We could go down the 5 biggest.
But even mechanics in general, like grammar and punctuation, or like the mechanics of the writing is only part of the thing. Like, the story you're telling is important, the way you tell it, the tone of the story, the delivery, the way it looks, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, you should probably use rules, use English the way that English is supposed to be used. But that's it's not the end all be all.
Yeah, I love it. You say like passive voice. Those are one of the things the editors have taught me. So when I'm writing, I can hear the editor going, that's passive voice. And I'll go, and I'll usually correct it. Every now and then I'll go, nope, that's what I intended. and I'll leave it in. But it's funny, years and years of people calling it out, and now I've become their editing lives through me, and I can hear.
I'll tell you, we talk to fiction writers all the time, and some very famous fiction writers. And I don't mean that like I'm tooting my own horn, but we've had some, like we've had Jonathan Mayberry, Melinda Snodgrass. We've had some and those aren't all of them, so nobody get offended. Amazing authors on this show, on this podcast, and we've talked to them. And the fact of the matter is, some of them put post-its with all the things their authors tell them that their editors tell them they do all the time, to look up and go, don't put he at the beginning of every sentence. All of us are different with what we do wrong and what we do right in writing. It's whether or not you get that little editor voice that goes, hey, fun story. Like I used to put realize. I don't anymore. I've talked about this on the podcast. I used to put the word realized in all of my stuff, like obsessively. Everybody realized everything, right? I don't do that. And I haven't done that for many, many stories now, because the editor, Jen, came to me and went, do you realize how many times you use the word realize? I'm like, no. And I don't want to say the number because it's depressing, but I was like, oh, cool. So every time I go to type the word realize, I go, wait, is this what I need to say? How many times have I already said it? Does it really add to the story? Like I have that whole process in my brain, and I could be typing, and I will literally stop and go, And that's important with any authors, whether or not they can learn and hear their editor's voice go, hey, we've already talked about this dumb shit thing you keep doing. Stop doing it.
Yeah, all right. You were asking me one of my things I wish I could fix. And but. I used to be an and but writer. I was always putting an and and a but. And I think an editor finally literally verbally said that you're an and but guy. And, just putting too many ands and buts to continue a story. And I was like, I realized that's who I was, and I did it all the time. And now every time I put the word and or but, I can hear the editor, and I'm like, is it needed? Is that the best way to approach it? Yeah.
No, that's the important key. Okay, we
Bring
are
back the yet.
Look, the editor's like, yes, I have accomplished things. Okay. So, Roger, how do people find your current breadth of work?
LinkedIn. Again, it's pretty boring stuff. It's all computer stuff. I'm on LinkedIn.
It is not boring for people who are interested in that industry.
Roger A. Grimes. So Amazon is the books. Most of the articles, the last couple of years' articles are on LinkedIn. Look for Roger A. Grimes. I have to put the middle initial, because if you put in Roger Grimes, you get the former leader of the Labor Party of Newfoundland. And I get hate mail for him, like when he restricts fishing rights in New Brunswick. So I have to differentiate myself as Roger A. Grimes. So
we should probably talk about your pen name, but that's a different podcast. Okay, so it has been fantastic having you. I'm Erica Lance.
J.M. Paquette.
Our guest has been Roger Grimes, and we will see you next time.
take care, everyone.
Woo woo.